The gyro sandwich is one of my favorite things to eat, but the folly of trying to make one at home is demonstrated by this 2005 episode of Good Eats. First, you have to make the meatloaf mix, and then you need to get it on a rotisserie. And even if you have a rotisserie, you're probably going to do what Alton does here, which is to cook it, take it off, then carve it, and then eat. And look how little browned crust he has. In a real gyro or shawarma joint, the meat stays on the rotisserie all day long, so when you carve off some browned surface to eat, the underside keeps cooking and gets browned too. You're constantly making new crust, thus every strip of meat you eat is brown. This is a tremendously convenient way of cooking in a restaurant where you're continuously serving people, but at home you want to cook, stop cooking, eat, and then get on with your life. So, here's a way of getting those same delicious gyro flavors in a way that is much better suited to home cooking. I'm calling it a sloppy gyro. The first thing to do is to make the tzatziki sauce. You can buy it pre-made, but if you want to make it yourself, here's an easy way. I've got a cucumber, a lemon, a little garlic, and about 10 ounces or 300 grams of plain Greek yogurt. I accidentally bought the fat-free kind. Boo. If there's loose whey in the yogurt, you could pour it off. Some people even drain the yogurt in a cheesecloth. As a sauce for gyros, though, I actually want a looser consistency. People get their cucumber into little pieces for tzatziki in innumerable ways. I think a box grater is the easiest. I'm using the large holes. Some people take the seeds out. I don't bother. You do want to get some of this water out. Again, cheesecloth is a common way of doing it, but I just gather it up in my hands and squeeze it over the sink. Good enough for me. In the yogurt it goes. Garlic. For this quantity, I'd just start with one garlic clove. You might want more, but it's going to be raw, and raw garlic is vastly more potent than cooked, so be careful. I want to grate this, which means I need to peel it whole without crushing it, so I just cut off the root end and then roll it hard between my hands. Let's just pretend that didn't happen. And this is old garlic, so I gotta cut off that rotten spot. And yeah, as will happen with old garlic, there's a green core in there where the clove is starting to sprout. That core is bitter. I don't think it matters at all in cooked garlic, but in raw garlic, I will notice that. So I've got to crush it a little bit to get that core out of there, and now it doesn't have the structural integrity to be grated. Okay, I guess I just gotta mince this up as fine as I can with a knife. A press could work well too. Into the yogurt that goes, and I'll start with the juice of half a lemon. Might add some more later. Some people use vinegar instead. A little olive oil, and ideally fresh mint or fresh dill. I have neither. I'm going to use dried dill, which is still good, just be careful, it's stronger. Mix that up and give it a taste. I think I want the whole lemon. And some more oil to compensate for the non-fat yogurt. Bleg. More dill, and I forgot to add salt. Big pinch of salt. Now, if you don't like how this tastes, blame yourself, not me, because you can just add little bits of things until you like it. One note of caution, though, which is that as this sits, the garlic flavor gets a little stronger, or maybe just more widely dispersed. One big clove is enough for me. Beautiful, nice saucy texture, as opposed to the almost cheesy texture that I think people prefer when they're eating this as a standalone dish. Let that sit as long as you can before you eat. It gets better. During which time, I will scan my grocery receipt into Fetch, the sponsor of this video, and the easiest way to save money on groceries. Easy as 1, 2, 3. Install the app, sign up, and then scan your grocery receipts. You just take pictures of it with your phone, and then the app stitches all the pictures together for you. If you're grocery shopping online these days, as so many of us are, that's even easier. You can just upload your e-receipts. Some other services like this make you scan product barcodes or select specific coupon offers when you scan. Nothing like that with Fetch. Your scans are immediately converted into points that you can then redeem for savings on like a million things. More groceries, sure, but the points can also go toward Amazon, Hulu Plus, video games, all things we're using more than usual as of this recording. Download the app now with my link in the description and use my code Ragusia to get 3,000 points when you scan your first receipt. Hit the link downstairs, promo code Ragusia, get started with 3,000 points. Thank you, Fetch. All right, dry off that cutting board, and then here's a red onion. I will halve it, peel it, and then halve one of the halves. This quarter onion I'm going to very thinly slice. These are for topping the finished sandwiches. I'll save those for now. The rest of the onion I'm just going to chop up. This is for the meat. Wide pan on pretty high heat, a little olive oil, and then in goes the onions. Give them a little head start, but I don't think you really have to get them brown now. They'll get browned later. In goes a pound of ground lamb. Get that in there and mix it around, and then in goes another pound. 2 pounds or 900 grams total. Seems like a lot of meat, but you'll see how much it reduces. I'm using a wooden spoon to break all this up and to continually scrape off anything that's sticking to the bottom. There should be more than enough water in here to continuously deglaze this pan for a while, but certainly if anything is going to burn, turn the heat down. I'm just trying to evaporate a ton of water out of this pan, which takes a while. I cook this a good 15 minutes. Once it's reduced, everything will start to smell and sound different. The pan will crackle as the meat and the onions start to fry in the fat. They can't do that until you've gotten a lot of the water out. This is the part that's essential to getting that gyro flavor. Remember, every strip of a gyro is supposed to be brown and crusty, so every bit of this ground meat needs to be browned, or at least as much as you can before things start looking like they're definitely going to burn. I'm going to throw in a big spoonful of flour for thickening, stir that in, and let it brown in the fat until burning is imminent, and then, yes, I'm deglazing with cheap white wine. You could obviously just use water, in which case I might hit it with some vinegar too at the end. Scrape, scrape, scrape with that wooden spoon. That browned fond on the bottom of the pan is the outside of the gyro loaf. Time for some herbs and spices. Traditional dried herbs used in gyros: thyme, oregano, rosemary, marjoram. Use any combination of these that you have, or do what I do and use Herbs de Provence, which is a virtually identical blend. Not that surprising. Provence is the most Mediterranean part of France. Lots of overlap with Greek food there. I think you want a lot, like 2 tablespoons of dried herbs at least. A bunch of black pepper and a real big pinch of salt to start with. Stir that around, give it a taste, and what's really missing is cumin, at least a teaspoon I'd say, and I want more salt. This recipe is called sloppy gyros. A sloppy joe, for people who don't know, is a sandwich that's made with spiced ground beef that is bound in a sauce based on ketchup. And I'm going to put some ketchup in here. It just brings incomparable gloss to a mixture like this. I don't want too much. Too much would make this taste like not a gyro. That's why I also put some flour in there for thickening. Sloppy joes don't usually have flour, just ketchup. I'm mixing in little bits of ketchup and then a little more wine until I get the taste and the slightly saucy consistency that I'm after. And there we go. You may be tempted to drain out some of the fat. I say don't. The fat is where the lamb flavor is really concentrated. Without it, it almost just tastes like any ground meat. At the last second, I'm going to cut up some tomatoes for topping. Out of season, cherry or grape tomato varieties are usually the best ones in the grocery store. About 8 ounces, 200 grams. I would normally just cut them in half, but for this purpose, I'm actually cutting them into tiny little slices. These will lay flat in the sandwich and be less likely to slide out. You could warm up some pita bread, scoop on some meat, just give it a stir first to get that fat mixed back in. Top with some tzatziki, onions, and tomatoes, and flavor-wise, that is nearly identical to a real gyro, other than the meat being a little bit sweeter. The difference is almost purely textural. But what I prefer to do is to treat it like a sloppy joe and put it on a hamburger bun. Look at that. You probably got enough stuff here for like 8 to 10 sandwiches, which is great because wet food generally reheats very well. Just pack up the leftovers and have some tomorrow. Opa! Well, sloppy opa. Hey, that's what they called me in college.